can fashion save lives? Sounds a bit ridiculous, doesn't it? The idea of fashion saving lives. I mean, sure, intentional design or safety in clothing. Where can we see this in our world? Well, we know it exists in firefighter and army uniforms, construction attire. Even astronaut suits are considered as articles of clothing. Now, that's probably something no one in this room has ever seen or felt in person, but we all know that there's a lot of attention to detail there, right? You've got the gloves that latch into the arms, this big helmet that comes on, all these very important gadgets. Now, that's one piece of clothing where if there are any problems, if anything is messed up, it becomes life-threatening. Same can go for police uniforms. We've all seen those. Everything's very intentional with police uniforms, or uniforms in general, really. You know, we figured out where in the best place of the body is it to keep your gun, or how quickly you can access the cuffs, or talk to your buddy on the radio. Everything's been very much thought through. Intentional design basically ends there, only applying to these high-risk jobs. There are some consumer brands that are really interested in how we interact in our clothing, but humanitarian application for intentionally designed clothing has been ultimately non-existent. We see homeless on the streets daily in pants not meant for sleeping on city sidewalks. We see refugees fleeing in branded t-shirts and jeans, which of course makes sense because if we all had to get up and leave right now, we'd be stuck in whatever clothes we decided to put on this morning. But even the donated garments are more of the same, just trend-focused clothing that other people don't want hanging up in their closets anymore. And unfortunately, when it comes to disaster relief, stylish but ultimately useless clothes are the vast majority of items that are donated. And while there always seems to be a steady stream of donations, the clothes aren't always meeting the need and are often causing a myriad of other problems in crisis situations. For example, noisy or vibrant clothing bringing attention to people who are trying to flee undetected, dark or unrecognizable clothing creating danger when traveling on unlit roads or across water, water-absorbing clothing that adds weight and discomfort, clothing that's not responsive to temperature or climate resulting in illness, and not even to mention just the overall functionality of the garments. For example, if you're traveling with something important, you'd want to keep it close to you at all times. Or if you're traveling with a lot of things, you'd want to have at least several pockets on the body to put it in, so that way you can distribute the weight. If it rains, you want your clothes to be able to dry quickly, or even better, to keep you dry while you're wearing them. When I visited refugee camps in Greece, I watched volunteers passing out spring jackets for winter because that was all they had. I saw children running around in the cold of November in adult-sized flip-flops, occasionally taking them off so they can play jump rope without tripping. Mismatched shoes in bins at warehouses where there was, surprisingly, even an inventory of Halloween costumes. Clothing is being given out in the wrong sizes, for the wrong seasons, for the wrong purposes, with visible wears and stains. What is needed is clothing that goes back to the original purpose of clothing. A sort of clothing for crisis, if you will, where form should follow function. Design should be user-centered and solution-based, made to solve problems, not create more. Clothing should be seasonless, adaptable to any environment, and sizeless, able to fit most body types. And most importantly, clothing should not be related to the cause of death for anyone. It's funny how quickly we forget that clothing is one of the key things we need for survival in our expanded environments, and yet the fashion industry feels no compulsion or no responsibility to provide for those who still rely on it for survival. So then, why isn't fashion considered as a way to provide relief for global issues? I am a solution-based fashion designer, which means that I understand the true value our clothing can provide. I founded the humanitarian outerwear startup ADIFF that uses intentional design to assist refugees and homeless. Our goal is to utilize the fashion industry to create aid and awareness for global displacement. Now, this is inherently controversial because fashion, as we know it, doesn't really deal in the realm of politics or global issues, right? No, of course not. Fashion as we know it is useless. When I say the word fashion, what comes to mind? Let's see. Runways, models, luxury, red carpets, and Fifth Avenue? Well, hey, I'm standing on a red carpet right now. Something frivolous, superficial, unimportant, and expensive. Not to mention wasteful. After all, fashion is the second most polluting industry in the world, just behind oil. Fashion is also the only industry that can tell you not to wear that perfectly good jacket hanging up in your closet because it is out of fashion. Fashion has widely been considered as detached from global concerns, or maybe even above them. Most designers or runway shows don't call our society or our practices into question. They don't offer proposals or solutions to combat the issues in our world. They deal with ridiculous, abstracted concepts like clouds, or waking up from a dream, or a city street in Paris. And if I'm being quite honest with you guys, I couldn't give a shit about any of this. It's a waste of time, money, resources, and space. It's really just a distraction from the real issues of our world, further highlighting the gaps between those who have the money and those who don't. I'm not here to convince you all today that fashion isn't all of these things. It is. But it doesn't have to be. Obviously, this sense of the industry can't save lives, but it's not my focus. I believe that purposeful design can create solutions and create aid, that fashion is capable of creating awareness and solidarity, and that it truly should be considered as an asset. So then, let's go back to that first question. Can fashion save lives? Absolutely. I bet you wouldn't guess that that tent over there, that's my jacket for this evening. This jacket is one of 7 that I designed in reaction to the refugee crisis. The collection responds to the need for shelter, for sleep, relocation, the need to be seen one second and hide the next, the need to travel safely on water, the risks of traveling with young children, and the need to have durable, functional clothing. Using intentional design to reduce risk, I created a series of jackets that transform into tents, a sleeping bag, or a backpack, as well as jackets equipped for carrying children, flotation, and invisibility. Everything is weatherproof, waterproof, unisex, and one size, and prepared to be worn in numerous environments. So these jackets have been tested at refugee camps in Greece and received an overwhelmingly positive feedback from the people there. On the level of functionality, they were absolutely able to meet the need, but it was also interesting to see what a positive effect they had on the morale of everyone at the camp. Part of the reason why I think it was such a success was because it allowed these people to escape through their current situation through something so light as fashion. It's interesting to see how this frivolity and lightness could be used as a positive, not a negative. The entire experience really enlightened me as to how universally uplifting fashion can be when used for good. Which brings me to my final point. Fashion can save lives in other ways, not just with transformable jackets. One key thing about clothing is that it's something that we all interact with every day. Let's everyone just take a second and look around and see if there's anyone here right now who's not wearing any clothes. No, right? Of course not. You wouldn't be allowed in the building, would you? Fashion and clothing are built into our society. Clothing may be able to help in daily issues and maybe even save lives in dire circumstances, but it's not capable of creating immigration reform or delivering money towards affordable housing. Only you guys can do that. If we're able to successfully hack the fashion system and use it as a vehicle for creating change, then fashion can have a much larger impact on global issues as a whole. Awareness and understanding are truly our greatest weapons. You can shut off the news, turn off the radio, or close your eyes as you walk past newsstands, but you can't really avoid clothing. Even if you don't want to wear any, everyone around you will, and you probably can't get past your bathroom door. What we wear sends a message. So really think about what you want that message to be. Do you want your clothes to be produced responsibly, ethically? Do you want them to bring people together or drive them apart? Do they have a story? What does that say? We need to reintegrate fashion back with what's actually going on in the world and hold the industry accountable. All of us should act intentionally with what we wear, why we wear it, and what we're hoping to accomplish. After all, clothing is a tool, and fashion is what we make of it. So now, what about my jacket? I'm sure you guys are super curious to see how this works. So let me give you a little magic show. Step 1, take out the poles. So these are easily stackable fiberglass poles that come out of these reflective channels. And fold up just like this. Let's do the same for the other side. So the material of the jacket is made of is a recycled polyester, and the material that we're making it in production will be made from recycled water bottles, so very excited about that. It's also very lightweight and breathable. I see this more as like a layering shell against rain, weather, water, whatever. So now, the base comes off. We're going to set aside the main part of the tent for a second. So this base actually becomes a rolled bag, which is where you can store the poles. And so we're also redeveloping this jacket so you can tuck in the poles and the base on the inside as well. I call this making the burrito. Again, a very airtight, waterproof base. These straps are so you can tie it any length on the body. It can be a shoulder bag. You can also roll up anything else that you want to keep safe in here. Not much technology in this jacket, actually. It's very simple, using a lot of old school kind of just zippers and pulls and ties. So most people are like, oh, does it have any high tech, if you press a button, will it do anything? I'm like, oh no, it's just using very old forms. All right. Now every jacket needs an opening, right? Got to put it on somehow. And what would a jacket be without sleeves? All right. Thank you, guys.